Behind me is a house that I leased 10 days ago for $2,200. It's now occupied by 6 and is turning out a profit of around $4,000 per month. And the better news, this is my 4th property of that kind. And I'm not anyone special. My name is Mark Wagner, and I'm just a normal dude who started subletting and renting houses. With just $10,000 on a credit card, you can rent a house like this and be making $10,000 a month, every month in passive income. With just $10,000 on your credit card, you can lease a house just like this and be on your way to making $10,000 a month in passive income. Come on inside, I'll show you around. So the first thing you want to do when you're looking at a new house is observe 2 things: the square footage and the number of rooms. That's going to be the most important decision in what you buy. Is if it doesn't have enough rooms, the math will not work and there is no way to make it work. Another thing, potential modifications. This door, for example, was not here, meaning that this entire area, a private exit apartment, was unavailable for use. By adding the door and furnishing it, I've turned it into a $1,400 a month profit generator. And I consider that profit because my cost per room is about $400. So it's $1,000 profit per this room, but it's really all profit because I was profitable before this room was even usable. Let's walk around some more. Another thing you're going to want to look for is the kitchens and the bathrooms. Now the kitchen in this house is all right, but this bathroom was recently renovated. I'm actually the first person to use this bathroom since the renovation. People really care a lot about those things. And more bathrooms is also more money, because if you have not enough bathrooms, if you have a private bathroom room, it will be worth a lot more than just an individual room. Because an individual room might garner $800 a month rent, where a private bathroom is $1,200 to $1,300 a month on Airbnb. This is a huge difference. Sometimes there will be wasted space. In this room, there's not quite enough room to actually put a twin bed, nor would you really want to put someone in a room like this. Now, in the past, yes, I have done houses where I used rooms that really were too small to be considered a room. I no longer do that because the kind of person that you'll attract with that is going to lead to other problems that you'll have. Again, you want to do a nice house to start with, but you want to make sure that you are getting that value. Now, this is a 7-bedroom, and 3 of those rooms are premium rooms, meaning that they are larger than 300 square feet, have a private exit, or have a private bathroom. And then the other 4 rooms are standard rooms, which are easy to furnish because everything is uniform. And in the processes that we've set up, you can see about how to furnish those rooms effectively and in a way that is easy to maintain over time, such as having the same beds. One problem we have is people leaving the window open. In the desert, that's not awesome, but it's just a small cost to pay. Numbering the rooms is also very useful. I like to just number them. I know that coming up with a creative name sometimes gives it more of a hostile vibe, and people, feel more accustomed to it, but it's better to have numbers for just keeping safe, because the worst thing you want to do, worse than having someone feel a little bit like it's a factory, is to have someone go in the wrong room, go in someone else's room, or to double book rooms. So having very clear order is important right off the bat. I also like to keep a closet for all of the things where people can just go. If they show up and they don't have clean sheets for some reason, they know where to find them. Now, I'd like to show you one of these rooms. Unfortunately, they're all booked. They all booked within a few days of starting this. Let's check out the backyard. Now, in certain weather, like in California, you can put a casita and you can get some extra value from having a large backyard. Here in the desert, there's not too much you can do with it, although I have a Winnebago, so I keep it there. You can't quite see it from here, but That's a fringe benefit to doing this, is you'll always have space if you want to have a house party, accommodate friends in town, or park some extra vehicles. It's great to have a lot of houses. One thing I'm thinking about doing here at some point is putting in an above ground pool and maybe doing some landscaping there. Now, I don't own the house, so it really shouldn't be on me to do this, but if it's my business, I care and I'm willing to put some effort forward, more than some homeowners even. And that's a selling point I use when I'm trying to explain to the landlord why they should rent to me. If I'm being straightforward about what I plan to do, I want them to know that I have a vested interest in keeping the place nice, more so than them. Let's talk about furniture. A lot of the furniture I order on Amazon, and you can do that, buy mattresses and bed frames and things like that. However, I think used furniture is a really good way to go because you're saving the planet, you're keeping clutter down, and you're getting higher quality stuff than you get on Amazon. This is an epoxy finished table that I got for $30, and I had someone deliver it for me for an extra $10. This table would have been a few $100s new, or I could have gotten a cheap folding table, but that just doesn't look good. It doesn't come across well. And with this cinder block wall, I have to compensate a little bit with some higher-end furniture. This leather couch is free, and with just a little cleaning by our maid, it looks wonderful. I also like to stock the area with food, and it doesn't have to be expensive food, but you want to keep a few knickknacks. Like, we're in the desert, a cold drink, like a spindrift or something. It might be something someone will want to have when they're visiting or seeing the place, and it's just nice to know it's there. So don't be stingy about the food. Yes, sometimes people will eat your food. Let them eat your food. You're charging a premium because you are operating a premium location. I would love to show you more of the beds, but we may have to save that for our next trip. I'll show you upstairs some of the mattresses that I use. They're these folding mattresses. Now, memory foam mattresses you can get at Costco. We got these fold beds on sale for $160. These are great. They are a little bit thin though. So I would say a used mattress sometimes is the ticket. If it's lightly used and it's a full frame coil mattress, 10-inch or more, that's gonna be more comfortable. And never go twin under any circumstances unless the room absolutely mandates it, because people aren't gonna stay long-term on a twin bed. Let's talk about maintenance next. So there are a few tools you always want to have. The basic tool set is required: screwdriver, Phillips flathead, pliers. I like to keep this little utility closet here where I keep my basics: extra hardware, drill, hammer, box cutter, cleaning supplies, toilet paper. We know that's hard to find post-COVID. And that way, when something breaks, you can ask them to fix it themselves. Or if you're there and you just need to fix something real quick, you can do it. Don't lug your tools with you. Don't do that. I have 4 properties in 4 states. I can't bring my tools with me everywhere. So if someone else isn't doing it, I'm just in town, I want to do something real quick, good to have tools on hand. Now, part of the reason I got this house was because I had to agree to some things that other people might not be willing to agree to, because we are in a very hot, historically hot rental market right now. I agreed to pay for the flooring of this room, which I'll show you photos of. We'll put it right here in the, let's put to the VAs, let's put the picture of the room from Airbnb right here in the frame of the picture right when I set this, and then cut this part out. I also agreed to install the washer and dryer. So I got one used, but with a 1-year warranty. And I also agreed to pay for the door and some other repairs to the house. Now, most people expect a house to come ready to go, but there were 5 competing offers to rent this house. So I had to put down 4 months rent up front in cash. Fortunately, I could do that. Usually it'd only be 3 months rent. That's still under $10,000. So we're still within our budget here with the credit card. If you're really thrifty, you can definitely make this happen well within the budget. I like my guests to enjoy the finer things in life. That's why this is the only room where I did go cheap. I went with the polyester bed set. I think that cotton beds and higher thread count sheets give better sleep. Remember, they're gonna spend more than half their time here sleeping, so they should get a good rest. If they're sleeping well, they're probably gonna stay. I also like to provide desk furniture because it's important for people to be able to work while they're here. Now, lately we've been very busy and haven't really gotten a good desk for this room, so this is a holdover for now. It was one from the neighbor. But when you can, make sure to get desks in your room. It's not as high priority as the bed, but you want to do that. For check-in, I like to leave the key in the drawer for them, and they can just leave it there when they leave. Security is often a little bit overestimated. You're not gonna have a lot of issues. There aren't TVs in here to steal, and even if there were some cheap televisions, probably not a huge risk. The bigger risk is bad reviews because people can't access the dwelling or they can't find the key. You don't want to go too far out of your way because if you're managing 46 tenants like I am, you can't have a special procedure for each key. It should be something very standard and very simple. If you notice the furnishing in here, I use curtains because it's very important to black out this sunlight so that they can get an adequate amount of sleep. And it's also nice to put some paintings up in the room. You know, you could have something that says live, laugh, love, or just something from a yard sale or a thrift store, or something cool. I like to not do the IKEA pictures if possible because, I like to go green and use something that is already been made, that's older and has a little more character to it. Internet, this is really big. Today, people spend at least 5 hours a day on the internet. So I use the fastest internet I can get. I pay $200 a month for internet because I want commercial grade speed. I want everyone to be able to stream their movies in comfort without problems. If the internet goes down, it's a crisis. It's very important to provide that, and if it's unstable in certain areas, you just can't really get stable internet, spend 20 bucks a month and just have a hotspot around the house for them to use in case. That'll keep them very happy. Keep your business functioning smooth. Oh, hey there. What am I doing? I'm staging. It's very important that you stage a house as well as if you were trying to sell it because people are going to look at the pictures before they book. That is the number one thing they're going to look at. Before the description, even before the reviews, they're going to look at the pictures. So make sure that you have a lot of light, open up that f-stop a little bit, maybe do a longer exposure, and put some nice things around, like some Cabernet, candles, and other things like that. It only costs you a few dollars and it goes very, very far. Now let's talk about the math of doing a rental house. You can very easily go from profitable to break even and maybe even to unprofitable if you don't do the math right. If you have a 3-bedroom and you're renting it for $2,000 and the average room is $700 a month, what is your cost before utilities? $2,000 a month, $2,100, you're making $100. Utilities are gonna, let's say $400, it's gonna put you in the red $300. You can't win with a 3-bedroom, you just can't. You need to have 5 or more bedrooms to win. And I like to say, if you can find something with 7 or 8, that's where you're truly in the green. Think of it this way, the first 4 rooms, the first 3 rooms pay the rent, the 4th room pays the utilities, and the last 2 rooms after that are profit. So if my last 2 rooms are $1,000 and $1,500, that's $2,500 in profit every month. Think about that. So I have 3 additional rooms, $1,200, $1,200, and $1,500. What's the math on that? $3,900 a month, correct? So $3,900 a month times 12. Now remember, this is cash income, so you can make some deductions. So if you divide that by part of your tax rate, you can get kind of what your equivalent income would be if it were a W-2 job. That's pretty high. That's over $50,000 a year. So at $70,000 a year job, what do you think you're putting more time into? A $70,000 a year job where you have to be there 40 hours a week? Or a house like this where you just check on it occasionally and sometimes even enjoy it? I think we both know the answer to that. Really, you think that you're gonna make more money working 40 hours a week? Well, I hope you enjoy what you do. Right, I spend about 3 hours a week on a property, and most of that time is just on my phone. Some of my properties are in other states that I haven't been to in months. I've gone almost an entire, actually, I've gone 2 years without visiting my Colorado property in the past. 2 entire years managing it remotely. Now, you need to have people in the area to handle things for you, of course. You need to have handymen, plumbers, but usually just that friend who's always available and can kind of get things done. Maybe we'll need a little bit of money, but that's okay. You want that. You want a little reasonable cost, $20 to run over there and take care of a thing or supervise a contractor doing some work for you. That's what you need, someone there, boots on the ground. If you have that, you can avoid going there. And I promise you, the airfare is more expensive than having someone do the work. And your time is, of course, of the utmost value. So it's very important to delegate out, yeah. It's very important to delegate out these kinds of things. So I have 4 properties right now. I have a townhouse in Maryland. I have a full-size 8-bedroom house in Gilbert, Arizona. I have a mobile home in Colorado. That one I own outright, I purchased. And I have now this location. And of course, I'm staying in Henderson with a friend. But what do I'll just cut it at that last thing. And I'm looking at getting another property in North Las Vegas in a few weeks. It's going to be a 8-bedroom house because we're actually going to be putting in walls. And we've spoken with the landlord, we've prearranged this. He's on board, he's excited. He's had some bad evictions in the past. And we're going to talk more about that in the chapter about getting the deal, but that's coming up. And that house is probably going to turn around $5,000 a month in profit. I'm very excited. So you've seen a little bit about how I do this. But you want to know, hey, is this something I could do? Because that looks like something that requires some like expertise in that area. But really, it's something anyone could do. Have you ever lived in a house? I'm sure you have. Have you ever plunged a toilet? Have you ever brought your bed in? Have you ever done a move? Have you ever gotten a roommate? Have you ever stayed on Airbnb before? If you've done any of these things, I have news for you. You're qualified. You can do this too. And you can do this with as many houses as there are available that are with owners that are willing to rent to you. You can do this with as many houses as their owners are willing to rent to you. All you have to know how to do is how to sell the owner on your business, how to convince them that you are going to be trustworthy. And you wouldn't be lying, because statistically, houses with multiple paying adults are more stable than a family, because the families often have only 1 or 2 head of household, and if they can't support them, the children aren't paying the rent. Whereas if you have 5 adults, there's a good balance and a good safety net. If one of them loses his job, which we know is very common these days, the others can pick up the slack and easily cover it. So it's very safe to rent to groups of people. And the wear and tear is really not that bad. If you think a dog or an occasional Airbnb gets this bad, wait till you see what children do with crayons. So how do you do this? My goal with this course is to show you how, because I want you to write back to me a few months from now about how you got started and how you became profitable, and tell me how much you're making. I understand that it's helpful when you have a lot of money. I've been a benefit. Now, this is easier when you have a lot of money at your disposal, but you don't have to have it. In fact, you could just have a credit card with a limit of $10,000. And that's the point of this course, is getting to 10K in 1 year in passive income a month with a $10,000 credit card. So if your time to profitability is 2 months, that means you could actually make $15,000 a month in profit, theoretically, based on the average house. So if each house turns an average of $3,000 a month, and you want to make $10,000, roughly 3 houses will do it. So you could get there in about 6 months with just a $10,000 limit credit card, because you just have to wait until you've paid off the expenses from the first one, expenses such as first month's rent, second month's rent, deposit, furniture, and other incidentals, repairs, labor, which are becoming increasingly expected the tenant to pay now because of the hot housing market. It's completely within your reach to do this. You just have to have a little faith in yourself and put in a little bit of elbow grease. Now let's compare the income from this to working at a regular job where you have to show up. Wealthy people understand that their time is the most valuable thing, so they look for passive income over anything else. Even if you could make more money actively working, it's always superior to have a passive alternative to paying you, because it's scalable. You only have so many hours. I've worked 2 and 3 jobs at a time, and that's about it. I'm capped out. But with these, once things are set up, after the first few months, it will keep going. And I have some properties that I've had since 2013 and 2012 they never stop operating unless you decide to let them stop. You can always recover. You might have a few months where things are bad, if you have a few tenants who aren't paying, or you have to evict somebody. But if you are patient and you just understand that that is a time period, but it will pass, you will always end up in the green again because you've balanced your risk. You have multiple tenants, and the odds are very low that they will all mutiny and not pay you. Although I do have a story to tell you about that from way back when. It's important to screen your tenants, and we're going to go over screening tenants next. Okay, so you have a tenant who wants to book your place. Now you're smart and you used Airbnb because Airbnb has some elements of screening already built in, such as credit card authorizations and background checks, whereas Craigslist, kind of on your own. But Airbnb isn't foolproof. Sometimes people get by the background checks, and sometimes they overstay their welcome, and sometimes they even cause damage. But there are ways to get around this. If you can, try to speak to them on the phone before you let them book. If you put your phone number in 3 separate increments in the text, the filter won't stop it. Now, I don't want to abuse that all the time. If someone has a few good reviews, or they're booking for a brief period of time, or that you'll be in the area when they're coming, it's better just to meet them there, because Airbnb will eventually catch on to that and they may ban your account. It is important to get Airbnb out of the equation sooner rather than later because of the fees charged can be upwards of 30%. However, it's a great place to start and provides a great safety net for you and a lot of insurance, but only in the area where they're staying. For more Airbnb tricks, there's a great Facebook group called Airbnb Vent and Discuss. It's a Facebook group that's like 50,000 hosts strong. But we're here to talk about how to convert people from Airbnb into long-term. So when I do an Airbnb listing, I typically set a very high daily rate and then a decent weekly discount if I want the property to perform. But if I'm purely going for stability, I make the monthly discount about 50%. That strongly encourages people to book for the month or more. And of course, just as a safety net, there's a minimum of 5 days because I don't want to have turnover of every few days. It takes a lot out of me. I have to show up, change sheets, and you often get negative reviews from short-term stays. Longer-term stays, they're more willing to do things like put their shower curtain back up or do their own laundry or something like that because they're a residence, not a hotel. For one thing, you can do the no deposit route. The jury is kind of out on which is better because oftentimes you can get higher rent without a deposit. If you can charge someone $800 a month with full deposit or $1,000 a month no deposit and they last 5 months, you're actually doing better without the deposit. The deposit, on one hand, does give you a weapon because if you have to remove them, you can offer to give them the deposit back, whereas they know if they do not have one, they have less to lose. However, they also feel a little less grounded because psychologically they have less of a lease with you, they don't have an agreement, so they may not feel like they have the tenant's rights and they want to squat on you and force you to kick them out. Once they've been booking with you for a while, you can ask them, hey, would you like to renew? And if they say yes, then great. Let's chat offline. Call them on their number. Don't discuss this through the app. But they're probably savvy to the fact that Airbnb charges 30% and will often be more than happy to switch over to cash. They can pay you with Venmo, Zelle, PayPal, and they're going to save money and you're going to make more money because when you take that fee, let's say they're paying $1,300 a month to Airbnb and you're getting $1,000 a month. Well, you could accept $1,200 a month and they're still saving money and now you're getting more money. So it's always great when you cut that middleman out. And you really, with Airbnb, you're getting above market rate. But they don't want to do that. They don't want to go on OfferUp or Facebook and find a place because they understand the prestigious nature of Airbnb. It's a higher quality listing and they're dealing with higher quality people with reviews. And once they're settled, they're not likely to move to some dump for $550 a month in the ghetto. They're going to stay at the location they are.
Okay, with Airbnb, there's fees on the buyer and seller side, right? You're paying a fee and they're paying a fee, or you don't pay a fee?
Correct. You pay a small fee and then they pay a fee, but really there's not much of a difference between the two. No matter who's paying the fee, it's going to affect the price and it's going to affect the desire for your location because people can compare with just one click. They can see the daily rate, but when they click it, it's going to show them the breakdown and the total. And if the total's too high, they're not going to book your place, regardless of whether it's coming from their side or your side. The point is the same. They're paying more, so they're less likely to book. It's a less attractive listing. So when someone's paying through Airbnb, they pay about $1,000 a month, and I get about $700 a month per room. As soon as I take them off Airbnb,
they're paying me $1,000 per month per room. So if I have 5 rooms that are medium and 2 large rooms, that goes from 7 times 5, which is 45, to 5,000. Wait.
7 times 5 is
35. That goes from 35. So when I go from 5 rooms at $700 a month and take them off Airbnb, I now go from $3,500 a month to $5,000 a month. And that's just those 5 rooms. And then the other additional 2 rooms go from around $1,000 to $1,400. So that's an additional $800. So now we're talking about 35, we're talking about $2,300 more per month just switching them off Airbnb. And we are profitable through Airbnb, but we definitely want to get as much as we can for the location because, let's face it, it's hard to get a house started. There's a lot of work to set up. You want to make the most of it. So get them off Airbnb as soon as you safely can, but make sure to adequately screen them during the time they are on Airbnb because it will never be easier to remove them than it is at the end of their Airbnb stay when you still have the protection of Airbnb. Once they're in with you, they're in permanently. Now, whether you decide to give them a written lease or not is up to you. In certain jurisdictions, it's very easy. In the state of Nevada and Arizona, you can evict people within about 30 days or less, in some cases a week, depending on the circumstances. In states on the East Coast, it takes a lot longer. It can take up to 6 months in Maryland. So what I like to do is not always do a lease or do an oral lease because it gives you the same protections without giving them a little more ammunition. But the bottom line is if you have someone that's really difficult to remove, that's when you get into a very special technique called cash for keys that the banks actually developed to get people out during the 2008 mortgage crash. We'll go into that in a bit, but the point is making the transition is a very important part of the process because your screening and your determination of who somebody is and how easygoing they'll be will make all the difference for you going forward. It's like running a company and they're your employees or your customers. They are both one and the same. And whether they are good or bad is going to make or break how stressful it is for you to manage the property. Are they the kind of people who are going to ask for constant accommodations, or are they the kind of people that are going to fix the sink when it broke for you and maybe go buy some extra garbage bags at Costco and say, hey, don't worry about it, or you can just send me the $20 for the garbage bags? Those are the tenants that actually make this possible. And giving them a good deal and incentivizing them to stay is going to help you. So when you have somebody that's really good, you want to give them a special deal because they are stewards. Okay, they are not just tenants, but they are stewards of your property. Now let's talk about what to do when you're removing somebody who's been there more than a month or longer and is no longer paying and is a problem. I can tell you many times that I've heard the words, I know my rights and I know the law. Well, that's right, they do know the law. Or maybe they don't. But regardless of whether they do or don't, they're going to waste a lot of your time if you have to take them to court. And you're also going to miss out on rental payments during that time. I know somebody who had to be evicted out of a house that was purchased, a townhouse in Maryland, and the bank came. And when they discovered they were still on the premises after the date which was they were supposed to leave, the bank gave them $27,000 cash, in the form of a check, of course, to be out by the end of that month. I will not forget that. I took a lesson from that. And from some friends in my finance schools classes in college who told me that with their tenants, what they do is pay them a little bit of money to leave. So I had a tenant who hadn't paid in 4 months. His name was Pierre. He later went to jail for, I think, taking a municipal garbage truck on a joyride from the police. It was all on video. But this guy rented from me, started, I think, on Craigslist or something several years ago when I wasn't monitoring or filtering very well, about 6-7 years ago. And after 4 months of not paying rent, he also took a vehicle and damaged it without authorization. Of course, this was in the state of Maryland, where you can't really get someone charged with the crime. So if your roommate takes your car and wrecks it, sorry, that's your fault. So I really wanted this guy out. He was making other people uncomfortable. He wasn't paying. And he said, I know my rights. You can't kick me out. So what I thought was, hey, you know what? I'm losing $1,000 a month in rent. Every month this guy's here. His deposit, he's well burned past his deposit, so there's no help with that, even though I had a 2-month deposit on this guy because I knew he had some issues. So what I did was I told him, hey, tell you what, I'll give you $1,000 a month and we'll put the first 100 of that into a storage unit for your stuff and I'll give you a ride to the unit. You can use my truck, we'll take all your stuff out. He gratefully accepted it and he was really eager to get his hands on the cash and I gave it to him as soon as we were out the door. Here's the money. And he regretted that decision. In fact, he still thinks that I'm a terrible person for giving him that, for offering that to him because he thinks I manipulated him. Well, call it what you want, but it worked out really well for me. I got rid of him and the room was rented within a week. Everyone was shocked to see that I got rid of this troublesome character within hours of my decision for him to leave. That's unheard of in this industry. So think about it. How much time are you going to spend in court trying to get your fair shake? Or does it just make more sense to be pragmatic and pull out the money? I think we both know the answer. This is a very important lesson to know early on because it's going to save you a lot of trouble. Money is never made in courtrooms unless you're a lawyer. Are you a lawyer? No? Or yes? No. Okay, then you shouldn't be in a courtroom. You're probably losing money if you're in a courtroom. Yes? Okay, then you probably aren't still watching this because you're too concerned about liability and you probably don't want to make $10,000 a month. You're probably doing pretty well. Well, actually, oh, you just clicked on that because you wanted to see what I would say. So I was afraid at first about whether or not I would be able to book a place up. And it's always a little bit of a anxiety point when looking at a property is, hey, if I lease this property, is it going to work out? Am I going to make a lot of money or am I just going to break even and it's going to be a big hassle and a waste of time and tie up funds? Well, there's some easy ways to tell. But namely, if you're doing the 7-bedroom rule and you're paying market rate, you should be okay. If you can do better than market rate, you're even in a better position. But what you want to do is compare the price of each room estimated. You can rent a master bedroom or room with private exit for about 30% more than a regular size room. And what the regular room rate of that area can be found on the difference between what the rate is on Craigslist, which is you'll always be getting more than that if you're going through Airbnb, and what the rate is on Airbnb. If you want to be very safe, assume that you'll be getting the median between those two prices. If you want to be optimistic, you could just assume that you're going to get Airbnb rate. But keep in mind that you might have to shell out some deals now and then and go below the Airbnb rate to keep good tenants and attract new ones. Many people are moving constantly now and they are looking for 3 to 6 to 12 month places to stay. The demand is nowhere near falling short. It is not going to fall off soon. You will be safe as long as you follow some basic rules. Figure out what your cost per room is. Figure out what your utility costs have been over the past few months. For example, if you don't have gas, you may have a very high electric bill. Factor those things in, especially if you have a pool. And when you know that, you can make the decision on how much you're going to make per month. You know, I would not book a house if you make less than $1,500 per month. The goal obviously would be $3,000 a month in profit, but the bottom line is less than $1,500 a month profit. It no longer becomes worth it because now you're making less than $30,000 a year for that house. And personally, I think you should make at least $40,000 to $50,000 a year per location. So there's a few different risks that can happen. As with anything, nothing is without risk. If you have a catastrophic problem, like a fire or flood, you want to make sure that you're meeting fire code. You have smoke alarms and CO2 carbon monoxide detectors. But typically, if you're meeting code and your landlord has a rental license, if required in the area, you're fine. You'll also usually be covered under Airbnb's insurance if it's an Airbnb-related incident. An additional protection you can have is you can get renter's insurance. Probably worth it if you're worried about catastrophic risk. However, not entirely necessary depending on the situation. Your biggest risks are going to happen slowly. The problem you will have with renting cars on like Turo, or it used to be called relay rides, is someone could crash the car, someone could die. With rent, it tends to happen slowly. If there's a problem, it's more of a cancerous developing problem, like a bad tenant that's making people uncomfortable or not paying. The problem doesn't happen immediately, and you have plenty of time to correct the problem, and you have warning before it gets worse and exacerbates. And it's not really, it's relatively limited in how bad it can get, right? We're just talking about funds here. We're just talking about dollars. Now, in the event of a catastrophic thing, you will want to have renter's insurance. So you can factor that into your costs when you're doing your utility costs and your rent costs into a spreadsheet. And I'll show you some spreadsheet examples. Now, a few things to consider before you do this. There are risks, not in the sense of like danger, but in the sense of inconveniences and things that could be damaging to your bottom line. Do you have an Airbnb account? Have you ever done this before at all? Have you ever had a roommate before? Have you ever fixed anything yourself? You should be somewhat handy and you should be familiar with living with other people, because the safest way to start this is to live in the same property where you're doing it. Only the pros can have properties all over the place. You could be a pro within just a few months, but if this is your first time, I encourage you to start with the dwelling you're currently living in. Put your spare rooms on Airbnb and see how they perform and see how you interact with other people and if you can handle it, because your soft skills, your interpersonal skills are what matters most when converting tenants from Airbnb to full-time and attracting them in the first place. So some risks you might say are, what if I don't get anyone to book? Well, if you follow this recipe, you get proper photos, furniture, make sure to ensure your reviews are good, and take care of people, I don't see it becoming a problem for you, unless you just pay way too much in rent on the house. Now, if you go and rent a house for $9,000 a month and it's a 4-bedroom, the wind may not be in your sails. You need to find a place that makes economic sense. So that is in this formula card we're going to put in the screen right below here. Number of rooms, rent cost, average rent in the area. That's the most important thing to consider. Now, sometimes it can be hard to evaluate. You're under pressure. You're walking into a location that you've just found online and you're meeting with the homeowner and you don't quite want to reveal to them what your intentions are. The bad news is you're going to have to get it to them sooner or later. So let's talk about one of the most interesting and complex topics of this. It's not getting the tenants, it's getting the house. How do you walk into a house on a showing intending to rent it to multiple people? And how do you convince the landlord that you are the person they should rent to without being
Disingenuous or
without. We'll just jump cut to this. How do you go to a house showing and convince a landlord to rent to you without being disingenuous about your intentions with the property? First, you don't want to reveal it right away. That doesn't mean you're lying, but you don't have to discuss your intention with the property until towards the end of the showing when you've already decided you want it. So first, be good at doing math in your head. Observe the rooms. If it's a high-risk deal, such as an area you're unfamiliar with, you may wish to just take some pictures casually with your iPhone 11 Pro Max with the panoramic view or the wide-angle lens. And then you can put those on Airbnb, and then you can find out over the next day or two whether there's demand before you've even leased the place. That's the safest thing to do. Generally, if the math makes sense and you've finished the tour and the landlord seems like someone you want to work with, you should move forward and be ready to strike a deal now, because the market is hot and it's getting hotter. You can't really wait. You need to show you're serious. So find out there's some key things you can find out just by asking the landlord. Why is the last tenant leaving? How long have you owned the property? Do you own other properties? Is there an HOA? You need to find out if there's a really gnarly HOA that's going to get on you about a lot of problems. If there's no HOA, you're in really good shape. If there is an HOA, hold on, it's not the end of the world. You need to find out what their rules are and whether they're a very aggressive HOA or more of a keep the garbage cans behind the house and everything will be fine kind of HOA. But HOAs are a problem. They are your enemy. But I've dealt with multiple HOAs. It's never been a problem for me. I've always prevailed. Now, when you're showing them who you are, landlords, depending on the kind of landlord, they may be predisposed to, depending on the kind of landlord, having a lot of money may or may not sell them on it. In this case, they were very cash motivated and they liked the fact that I could pay them in cash and that I was willing to pay several months upfront in cash. Other landlords don't like the sight of cash and may get an uneasy feeling that maybe it's not legitimate because you're operating in cash. So make sure to have a good credit score if possible and show you that you have sufficient money in the bank. If you have funds, it's going to make it a lot easier to score a large house. You could also come up with some alternatives. You don't have to openly admit that you plan on turning it into an Airbnb hotel, but you should be honest about your intention to get roommates and maybe stay there yourself. So you could say that you need some of the rooms for a studio, for production, or for work, for something work related, and that you may seek a few roommates in the future. And that basically opens the door. As long as the lease is written that subletting is allowed, you're good. You need to make sure that that's in the lease though, which means you can't go on telling them it's just going to be you and your cat. You have to tell them that there are going to be other people in the house. And you're probably going to have to accept whatever rules go along with that, such as providing the identities of whoever they are, or adding them to the lease if they're there more than a certain amount of time, like 6 months or longer, which might not be so bad because it also locks in your profit. It is a hassle though. So take into account how uptight the landlord is and use some of your soft skills to understand where they're coming from, empathize with them, understand they have a very hard job renting to people. It's very stressful work, which you're soon about to find out yourself. And then by virtue of that, you can make the deal happen. I do enterprise deals too in software, and it's not really much different. It's very important to actively listen to what the landlord is saying, what problems they've had in the past, and ensure that you can accommodate to that. If they say, I just had to kick someone out, it was very painful and upsetting, understand that and empathize. And then describe ways that you are not going to be like that person. And if they do get on your case about renting to other people, you could indicate that I thought that it would be better to have more security with more adults in the house, and I have an incentive to keep the property up. You may not want to come right out and say that, but if you're talking very frankly with them, like I am with certain landlords, they know exactly what I'm going to do with the property and they understand it. I've convinced them, hey, I'm going to provide a long-term income stream, and I am incentivized to keep this property up and nice because my income, my bottom line will be damaged if this property isn't in tip-top shape. So therefore, they're safe. I'm not here just for a year to lease and then leave. All my properties I've leased for years, and I have the digital payment records to show it. I can go on PayTrust, which I'll talk to you more about tools and tricks, and I can show them 9 years of rental payments to one landlord. That's impressive. Show them that and show them that they will get that check every month without fail. Regardless of whether there's a housing protection going on or an eviction ban, you're going to keep paying because you're a businessman, right?